So I can tell you exactly what my mindset was when Super Paper Mario came out. I was pretty high on how I felt about the Wii. Nintendo had shattered my initial skepticism about this console so hard that I had essentially become a hardcore loyalist. I was open to try anything they had to throw at me. More specifically, I think I was determined to like it. So, unlike a lot of fans who are less than thrilled when it was announced that Super Paper Mario would be a side-scroller, I was intrigued by the idea. Thinking back to Thousand Year Door's 2D Bowser sections, I was actually excited to see this iteration. So, when I played this game initially, it wasn't really with a critical eye at all. I just generally enjoyed it. Except that Luigi bit where you're walking forever. I took things so literally as a teenager, I didn't even take it as a joke. I genuinely thought the game had glitched out. We'll get back to this one though. I know this game generally got a good amount of hate for not being a turn-based RPG, and today, it seems like its criticism seems to stem more from its low level of difficulty and its gimmicks generally being pretty weak. I kinda want to take a look for myself, and well, since I'm trying to review all the Paper Mario games, it's a nice breath of fresh air to play something that's much less of an RPG in this long string of RPGs. An interesting limit Nintendo placed on the development of this game was to just use the Wii Remote. I admit, it's not the most comfortable controller to use, but I actually think it does a good enough job. The controls are relatively simple, and for the most part, they're pretty intuitive. 2 to jump, 1 to use your partner, A to flip to 2D. My only 2 gripes really is that pressing down to breathe fire as Bowser feels kind of awkward. Moving in 3D with the D-pad also isn't the best feeling experience, but it doesn't kneecap everything too much. If you've ever played a 2D Mario game, you're probably familiar with the formula. Mario will be speedy, but not too speedy. You'll get a set of power-ups. Typically, you'll go from left to right without much mind to backtracking. If there's any, it's usually the secret finish. You'll get a super easy version of an obstacle, then you'll get some creative variations to the obstacle. In Super Paper Mario, on the other hand, what do? While blending the two is an interesting idea, I don't blame people for complaining that this game is too easy if they had any expectation of doing this. That said, consider the focus of Paper Mario as a whole for a second. If you take away the turn-based battle mechanics, what is the core of Paper Mario? A lot of it is exploring the terrain and pulling out the right tool for the right task, right? Mechanically speaking, that's kinda what this game focuses on. There will be some kind of puzzle or obstacle preventing you from going forward, and you have to figure out what to do to move forward. You pick up a number of partners with different abilities, and on top of that, now you have 4 playable characters, though you don't have all of them until quite late in the game. So Luigi has a super specific high jump that gets you past a few obstacles and keeps you out of certain parts of the game till later. Peach has a long, floaty umbrella jump, which in my opinion has a lot more utility. I enjoyed using her, more than Luigi. Bowser is essentially very similar to his Thousand Year Door counterpart that inspired this game, both in look and in feel. Surprisingly, I actually used Bowser a lot. He's a freaking powerhouse. Every move he does racks tons of damage. I did take a little adjusting, getting used to hitting down on the D-pad instead of hitting the B button. Like in the GameCube game, the the 2 button, is taken up by partners. Only have so many options when you're limited to 2 buttons. Wanted to get that pointer feature in, I guess. I do prefer the D-pad over the control stick when it comes to 2D games like this, so I'm not sure the extra 2 buttons on the nunchuck would have helped much. I feel like the argument can actually be made that the GameCube controller wouldn't have been the best for this either. Can you imagine, like, I don't know, A to jump, B for the partner, X or Y for the side ability like Bowser's Fire or Luigi's Jump? Might be a little awkward shifting your finger off just to do that. Then just, like, flick around the C-stick for that pointer thing, oh my god, that sounds like a nightmare. It certainly wouldn't be intuitive, but all you use that ability for is to highlight large hidden objects anyway, so like, it's not like it requires a lot of dexterity like a shooter or something. If it weren't for this part of the gameplay, I would actually love to play this game on a SNES controller. That'd probably be ideal. Considering how awkward some of these other alternatives seem, given the moveset though, is this really the worst they could do? They were sort of pulling a DK64 with some of the button combinations. Pressing 1 and 2 at the same time to pull up the quick menu actually was pretty intuitive and quick for me to pick up. I feel like they wasted the minus button on showing us the controls though. That easily could have been another submenu. Now that I think of it, Mario flips with the A button. Why not assign Bowser's flamethrower there? Maybe you could have given Luigi another ability there. Had Peach, like, swing her umbrella like in Smash Bros. I can't really fault them for simplicity, though. That's sort of one of the strengths of this game. Okay, so the big gimmick of the game. It's a 2D game, but if you flip-de-doo to 3D, you get to see more. It's a cool way to hide the progression forward or general goodies or secrets. I often used it to go past enemies. The last level in this game, for example, is rendered way easier when you do this. Combine the ability with your partner carry, and you kind of fly right through it. I don't know, it's a cool gimmick. Kind of something to hook the player in, I guess, add some intrigue. Couple complaints right off the bat, though. The 2D world seems to have a lot more polish than the 3D world, which can often look and feel clunky, especially with the D-pad. You know, now that I think of it, a PS2 controller would have been perfect for this game. You get the D-pad for the 2D sections in a comfortable spot and the control stick in an acceptably comfortable spot, but you still get the SNES-style button layout. Anyway, kinda hyper-focusing on the controller layout a little too much. Even without the clunky controls, here, the 2D interpretation of everything just visually doesn't feel up to par with the 2D sections, or even the semi-3D we see in previous Paper Mario games. I guess an important counterpoint here is, from a gameplay experience perspective, how did flipping to 3D all the time actually integrate with the experience? Now, I have a tendency to check every corner of the map when I'm playing video games because the exploration is such a huge part of the experience for me, so I used it a lot. And there are actually enough goodies scattered throughout the levels that I didn't feel like I was wasting my time when I did it. The more important instances of where it's needed are obvious enough that people who don't play games this way won't be hindered, and I don't think it necessarily disrupts the flow of things in a way that would impact the gameplay experience negatively. I like to think the bar that limits how long you can do it for, if you're using it strategically to get past obstacles you can't just cheese without using some thought. Overall, I'm actually kind of glad it's in the game. I will say, I know some people who play this game tend to hang out on Mario mostly, and only switch specific characters when they need their specific ability, which is a real shame because Mario, Bowser, and Peach, fuck you Luigi, all have a very different feel and moveset, which contributes to a different platforming experience. The hybrid experience of Super Paper Mario doesn't just extend to the shift in perspective though. It's a blend of 2D platformer and RPG. While 2D platforming is the backbone of the gameplay, you do have a health bar, enemies have a health bar, you have an arsenal of tools for your moveset and combat, you have healing items, heck, unlike the next few Paper Mario games, there's an XP system, though it hardly feels consequential. It is nice to give a little dopamine hit the game gives every once in a while for, just interacting with it. Another element that comes into this game, more akin to an RPG, is the heavy focus on story. Maybe a little too heavy if I'm being honest. You can tell whoever wrote the story here is passionate. It's quite detailed. Up there is one of the better Paper Mario stories, I might say. I love how Bowser and Peach are like canon married against their will, and how each of their characters handle it is totally in character. And it's funny that they proceeded to use this idea again in 2023 when they released the Mario movie. Didn't think I'd see a Paper Mario storyline in there, of all things. That said, some of these scenes do drag, and there's definitely instances where there's way more information and exposition presented than needed for both the story or the game progression, or they like to hit certain points over and over. Overall, though, it doesn't hinder the game experience. The pacing isn't really disrupted by it, though there is a very interesting break in the pacing where one of the missions has you die, go to hell basically, explore that world, and then come back up before going back there. This is after the prior world is cut short in order to add weight to the looming threat. I was worried after this happened that the game experience was going to be rushed a little, or, they're just going to rush right to the end of the game by, cutting the next few missions shorter or whatever. But they made up some lost ground by messing with the pacing they had established for the first several chapters, also making what was going to happen next feel a little less predictable. A pretty bold move, in my opinion. In concept, the idea of combining genres is to create a new experience that's fresh and intriguing. In practice, it's nowhere near novel, though. I can't really say I've never played a slower-paced platformer before. The 3D mechanic feels like it could have been fleshed out way more compared to the rest of the game. While the RPG elements are interesting, and it's fun to get a bit of a dopamine level up hit every once in a while, in practice it bears little outcome on the game, as typical damage numbers rank in the 10s at most. It's certainly nothing earth-shattering, but it's fun regardless, and more importantly, it's unmistakably Paper Mario. This game carries the Paper Mario identity, as it absolutely answers the question, what if Paper Mario were a side-scroller? It may not be the most challenging game, it may not be the most polished game, it may not have the best controls or the most balanced systems. If you're a fan of Paper Mario, though, it's a great game, and it's mostly harmless fun. There are even moments here or there where it manages to shine above its peers. While Thousand Year Door presents a moon area with slowed down mechanics where you just slowly walk to the space station, Super Paper Mario actually takes advantage of the outer space themed movement with platforming built around the higher jumps you perform. My favorite story bit where this kingdom I didn't bother to Google, but you fight guys and you move on to the next level over and over. Where that kingdom is sucked into a black hole in the middle of you doing that, and you're made to walk and keep walking and keep walking. Eventually something happens, but they make sure you wait long enough to make you think you might be going the wrong way. The developer messing with the gamer? Again, bold. Unfortunately, Nintendo thought this was too ambitious and haven't broken from the turn-based system since, preferring to try out different unique altercations to the system instead. Playing through Origami King, there are these fights where you use the hammer to damage enemies instead of entering a battle, and honestly, I had the thought playing, as well as a handful of YouTubers I've watched, that a great idea for the next Paper Mario game would be to give a non-turn-based system another try. And those sections played quite nicely. An idea that we actually see played out in 2D here already, perhaps ahead of its time. Again, not the best game I've ever played, but absolutely worthy of being remembered in my book.